Shabbat Shalom. For those of you who I haven't met, my name is Rabbi Lilli. I'm the Rabbinic Intern here this year. How many of you have watched the TV show Ted Lasso? A good amount, I hope. Ted Lasso, a show on Apple TV, is about an American soccer coach, Ted, who moved from Wichita, Kansas to London to coach English football for the AFC Richmond team. He moved because he was in the midst of a divorce from his ex-wife, Michelle. Throughout COVID, many of us watched Ted Lasso as a sweet escape from the world. I still think it is one of the purest shows I have ever watched. However, amongst the joy of Ted bringing these little biscuits in this pink box every single day to his boss, he also experienced panic attacks. We see him first experience a panic attack at a karaoke bar right after he signs his divorce papers. Then we see him experience a panic attack after getting a call from his son's teacher, immediately suffering a really intense flashback to his former life. We learn about the nuance and complexity of Ted through watching his panic attacks, and about his spirit and zeal through his work with AFC Richmond. Ted Lasso, having moved away from his married life, experienced ambiguous loss, a term coined by Dr. Pauline Boss in 1999. He knew that Michelle and his son still existed, living in Wichita, but they were no longer a part of his life like they used to be. Ambiguous loss is loss without closure. Divorce, unexplained disappearance, and separation are just a few types of ambiguous loss. Loss is always complicated to grieve, but when it's ambiguous, there's some extra nuance. In our Torah reading this week, Parashat Vayeshev, we begin the story of Joseph. The favorite child of his father Jacob, Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat, as Broadway later came to call it, is tormented by his brothers and ultimately thrown into a pit. Joseph's brothers bring back his rainbow cloak, torn up, completely bloody, to their father Jacob, hoping to persuade Jacob that his beloved favorite son is dead. The Torah tells us, Vayikra Yaakov simlotav, Vayasem sak bematnav, Vayitabel al beno yamim rabim. Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth on his loins, and observed mourning for his son for many days. All of Jacob's actions effectuate a state of mourning, though no burial or funeral could take place, as there was no body to do so. So, Jacob was simultaneously in aninut, the liminal state a mourner experiences between the death and burial, and avelut, when a mourner begins shiva. Jacob's sons attempted to create a shiva house for him. Vayakumu chol banav v'chol bnotav, l'nachamo vayamen le'inachtem, vayomer ki ered el beni avel shoelah. All his sons and daughters sought to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted, saying, "No, I will go down to mourn my son in Sheol." Unfortunately, Jacob experienced a textbook example of ambiguous loss. When defining ambiguous, creator Pauline Boss says, ambiguous is just defined as unclear loss with no documentation of permanence of the loss. Jacob's children tried to comfort him, as they would have if there had been a body and a funeral. But Jacob refused, in Hebrew, vayema'in, unable to process this ambiguous loss. Surely, in the time of the Torah, there was less understanding of how psychological impacts of loss, let alone ambiguous loss, affected us, though some of our medieval commentators attempt to illuminate Jacob's feelings. Rashi suggests that Jacob was in mourning, but he still thought Joseph was alive, and Jacob thought one should not accept consolation for someone who is living but believed to be dead. This is a common occurrence of ambiguous loss. If one did not physically see a person leave, they have a hard time accepting the loss. Or Rashi may be suggesting that Jacob knew his sons were lying and that Joseph was indeed alive, and he did not need any comfort or consolation. Rather, his intuition and spirit kept him going. At the beginning of Parashat Vayeshev, Jacob was settled in the land of Canaan, the house of his father. After his own life tribulations, he settled. Maybe he felt like he had reached retirement. A few psukim later, Jacob's retirement abruptly ended, thrust out of his moments of peace and into grief, this sort of unknown grief. Aviva Zorenberg notes that when Jacob was finally settled, he had yishuv hada'at, clarity, composure, and coherence. But soon after, he experienced tiruf hada'at, confusion, bewilderment, and loss of consciousness. Within Jacob's tiruf hada'at is his sense of ambiguous loss. Every year we read about Jacob's experience of ambiguous loss right before or during Hanukkah. Hanukkah falls within the darkest time of the year. As I like to joke, midnight actually comes at 5 p.m. when it's completely dark. It's not a coincidence that Hanukkah comes at the darkest time of the year, as two of its main themes are light and hope. Yes, there is physical light that will begin to emanate from our Chanukiot tomorrow night, but there is spiritual light too. We compound celebrations on Hanukkah, also celebrating Rosh Chodesh. When we light our Chanukiot, we increase a candle one by one each night. We're illuminating more and more light into our homes, inspiring us to keep striving upward into more light. And even on the first night, our Hanukkah candles are never alone. They always have the shamash, the helper candle. No candle ever stands alone, and light increases day by day. When Jacob is reunited with Joseph and his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, right before he dies, we see his refusal, or the Hebrew word vayima'en, again. Joseph is worried that Jacob is giving the better blessing to his younger son, Ephraim, and switches Jacob's hand placement. Jacob refuses, vayima'en, claiming that he knows Ephraim will become a bigger nation. Just like when Joseph supposedly dies, Jacob knows exactly what he wants, and even more, he knows when to refuse. Experiencing loss is a constant in our life. Death is just one type of loss among other less permanent or pervasive losses. The only thing consistent in the losses we face is ourselves. No matter what or who we lose, no matter when we lose them, and no matter how, be it ambiguous, sudden, or gradual, what remains constant is our ability to process, learning a bit more about ourselves from each loss. Jacob, in his experience of loss, shows his own acuity. He knows when to refuse, and he knows how to dictate his own experience. Ted Lasson, throughout the show, discovers more about his feelings of loss as he paves a path for his new life. We don't just need to turn inward, though, when we experience loss. We can also turn to each other, pushing ourselves to break down societal taboos against speaking about loss and opening space to discuss these experiences. If we try, We can be the shamash, attending to one another, even when it might feel like we are the only candle. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Urim Sameach. May your Hanukkah candles serve as a beacon of light, guiding you towards hope.